PSVR 2 is finally here, and already that catalogue of virtual reality games is expanding rapidly, with some console exclusives as well as plenty of ports of classic titles from the MetaQuest and other VR headsets. So which titles are absolute must-plays at launch to help you escape the grim, grey, repetitive monotony that is actual reality? Well, here's my favourite PSVR 2 games right now. Please do check out my PSVR 2 review if you haven't already, and poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Oh, and before we begin, it's probably worth pointing out that the PSVR 2 sadly isn't compatible with any of your original PSVR games. So if you want me to test this thing out with a bit of Astrobot or Rush of Blood, well, you're out of luck. But thankfully the PlayStation Store already offers some proper VR bangers, and one of the big PSVR 2 exclusives is Horizon Call of the Mountain. Easily the best showcase for this big white helmet that I've played so far. This casts you as a criminal type who's handed a chance at redemption when a whole bunch of robo-twats decide to kick 10 bells out of a settlement for no apparent reason. To earn your pardon for previous naughty misdeeds, you have to trek through some absolutely stunning vistas, occasionally shooting things in the face with your bow, and quite often doing a lot of climbing, which is surprisingly just as knackering in VR as it is in real life. While the climbing certainly felt a little bit repetitive to me, those action sequences are absolutely thrilling and the controls very easy to pick up. You'll be sniping robo-gribblies right in the eyeballs in no time at all. Those graphics are absolutely stunning, taking full advantage of the upgraded PSVR 2 display. You can see for ruddy miles and every inch of the world is packed with vibrant detail, while the rich audio also immerses you in this gorgeous and treacherous environment. Call of the Mountain uses all of the PSVR 2's top tech, including those haptics and even the eye tracking as well, or at least in the menus. It's more fun than a barrel of clowns, and frankly, if you buy a PSVR 2 and you don't check this one out, well, that would kind of be like going to a rave without a bucket hat, glow sticks and a pocket full of pills. And even though you're zipping about all over the place, I've got to say, with Call of the Mountain and all the other PSVR titles I've tried so far, I haven't suffered from any kind of nausea, motion sickness or anything. It's really impressive tech. Now, if you're a hardcore horror fan, you absolutely have to play Resident Evil Village in virtual reality. Village was already pretty scary at times played on a flat display, but to complete it in VR, you will need bowels of concrete. I never made it to the end of Resi 7 on the original PSVR, and I'm not sure I'll be able to get through the dollhouse on PSVR 2, at least not without violently ejecting my pancreas out of my arsehole. But this is undeniably the way to play it for anyone who's tough enough and well up for a truly immersive slice of horror. But be warned though, when things get a wee bit frantic, as they often do in Village, this PSVR 2 code will get wrapped right around you. It is a bit of a pain in the arse. And also at one point the cat came and brushed up against my leg and I almost punted the poor furry bugger right out the window. So definitely make sure that pets and relatives and everything else is kept well out of the room when you're playing. You don't want to accidentally pop Gran right in her false teeth. But certainly if you already own Village, then the VR upgrade is completely free, so there's no excuse not to play it. Definitely give it a go. Your gut certainly won't thank you, but you might enjoy yourself. Another PS5 game that now has VR support chucked in is Gran Turismo 7, so you can wang your way around each track as if you're actually right there in the driving seat. It's an experience that's almost as terrifying as Resi Evil if you're as hopeless at driving as I am. But virtual reality is hands down the best way to experience GT7, and it's yet another fantastic showcase of the PSVR 2's abilities. And likewise, No Man's Sky now has a VR mode added as well if you want another excuse to piddle around in that enormous universe. Now, while the PSVR 2 sadly isn't backwards compatible with games from Sony's original VR headset, one old title that's been relaunched for this all-new set is Thumper, a rhythm-based action title that's been upgraded with 4K HDR visuals and 3D spatialized audio, so it looks and sounds even more lush than ever before. While the gameplay is pretty simple in theory, mastering that timing as you swerve your way around corners and blast through barriers is a serious challenge, especially if you've already had a skinful. And it's all the more intimidating when you're up against those mega-sized boss chaps. If you fancy yourself a more relaxing experience, well, there's always Kayak VR. Put yourself in the virtual shoes of some beardy bloke called Keith who always wears shorts in winter and drinks his body weight in hemp tea every single morning, before going out for a paddle about in his trusty canoe. Those physics are unnervingly realistic, so cack-handed exercise dodgers like me will find themselves slamming into stuff just like in real life, complete with a good bit of haptic feedback of course. It is gorgeous and engrossingly atmospheric and much better than actually kayaking because you don't end up with a soggy arse. Oh, and you can also f about with a fish if you're not a fan of them. And in addition to all these exclusives and other fantastic VR titles, quite a few old MetaQuest VR games have been spruced up and re-released on the PSVR2, generally with enhanced graphics and audio. And here's just a few of my favourites. Now, one of the most fun arcade VR experiences on there is Runner, a shooty biking extravaganza that was possibly a wee bit inspired by the awesome Akira anime. It's not subtle, but it sure is stylish, and you certainly won't be bored by a single second, taking down seemingly endless swarms of baddies while trying your best not to smash into the many obstacles that pop up in your path. Not gonna lie, Runner will likely wear you down if you don't have the reflexes of a highly caffeinated F1 driver, because you'll see the game over screen so many times it'll probably invade your dreams. That learning curve is pretty steep, as you need to juggle steering with shooting off your bike cannons and pistols, hoying grenades at stuff, taking down shields, all kinds of shenanigans. But once it all clicks, you'll feel like the ultimate badass carving a path through the swaths of enemies and beating 7 shades out of the obligatory tough as nails bosses at the end of each level. Likewise, VR platforming fans should definitely check out the Moss games, which star an adorable wee mousie as she runs around lushly detailed environments, twatting robo-bugs with her tiny sword. Gameplay mostly involves tinkering with each mini level to open up the exit, which you'll do by directly guiding Quill the mouse around using the left thumbstick, as well as grabbing and yanking things with your own disembodied hands. It's an intuitive setup, albeit one with occasionally mildly irritating platformy moments. Every so often you'll find yourself battling a bunch of bugs with your sword, which helps to break up some of the puzzling shenanigans and inject a bit of excitement. The difficulty level is low, but Moss is still great fun, and the sequel, Book 2, is a direct continuation of the story, so if you crave more of the same, then fill your boots. Now, if you actually manage to make it all the way through Resident Evil Village without excreting both of your kidneys, well, another VR horror experience you might be well tempted by is Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. This melancholic post-apocalyptic tale that has civilization plunged into chaos and humans turning against their own kind in horrifying fashion could easily be mistaken for real life these days, but it's actually a pretty smart first-person survival adventure. From your base, which is inexplicably a bus parked up in a graveyard, you'll find yourself piecing together clues to find a legendary bunker, filled with enough supplies to last a lifetime. All the while you'll need to scavenge for food, bandages, weapons and materials that you can strip down and use to craft more useful items. The real joy of Saints and Sinners is that tense exploration. You'll need to creep cautiously through the skeletal remains of civilization, either sneaking by the shuffling dead or ending their misery with a brutal selection of melee and ranged weapons. The stealth mechanics are solid, and going one-on-one with a zombie and a shiv never gets old. You can't just poke that rusty blade into the head with a pathetic wee jab, you need to properly swing it into their skull and penetrate that brain to put their lights out proper. Not enough force and you just end up grappling with a seriously miffed off corpse. It's suitably groovy and it's bloody amazing. And if you enjoyed Saints and Sinners, well, good news! You can keep that gore flowing with Chapter 2 Retribution, which is basically more of the same but even more badass. One of the best additions is the terrifying night raids, which reward you with big loot payoffs, providing you actually survive the crowds of knocked off nocturnal brain coveters. Thankfully you can kit yourself out with Retribution's upgraded arsenal to give yourself a fighting chance. Chopping down hordes of flesh gobblers with a massive chainsaw or blasting them to bits with a sawn-off shotgun, yes bloody please. Oh, and you'll also face off against a Resident Evil Nemesis style big scary dude, so definitely keep that spare pair of pants on standby. Now, one of the best shooty action games on the PSVR2 right now, especially if you fancy a bit of a workout but can't be asked to drag your ass down the gym, is Pistol Whip. The idea here is pleasingly simple, just blow away any foes in time to the beat while ducking and dodging the many projectiles that make a beeline for your face. As well as the standard arcade mode, you got a couple of campaigns to play through, and while the plot here is about as meaty as a vegan sausage roll, nobody actually cares. They serve up the same addictive John Wick style gameplay and feature special challenges, such as an entire level where you can only melee. The best thing about Pistol Whip is that it makes you feel like a proper badass, even if you're just a bald middle-aged dickhead poncing about in his living room. Now, if you happen to be a bit of a Star Wars fan, you'll probably sploosh yourself silly at Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, a VR adventure that's absolutely packed to the pits with obligatory fan service. You play as a simple droid repair technician whose mission is to salvage some valuable cargo that you just jettisoned. You'll spend most of your time exploring the lush planet of Batu and blasting holes in unfriendly gang members who are after your precious booty. Although your enemies are about as clever as a box of Pop-Tarts, that combat is still good fun. You'll feel pretty badass dual-wielding blasters, and I really like how you can chuck your old weapons when they're spent and grab pistols from fallen foes. Another VR mind bender that's well worth picking up is the Last Clockwinder, which sees you striving to save an ancient clockwork tree with the help of magical robot cloning gloves. And yeah, I'm fully aware that that sentence makes it sound like I'm literally on all of the drugs, but hang on, I'll explain. What you'll essentially be doing in this game is harvesting fruit. Lots and lots of fruit. But you can't do this single-handed. Instead, push a button on your controller and then record yourself performing an action like plucking fruit and tossing it merrily into a collection barrel. Push the button again and poof, up pops a robot slave who'll happily repeat that exact action over and over for the rest of time. At first you'll be trying to set up the most efficient robo-labs possible, but as you unlock more rooms with more complex requirements, you'll find that these robots must work together with perfect timing to get any kind of result. There is a sweet little story running through the Last Clockwinder, which is gradually revealed via conveniently scattered tape recorders, the kind of shit that game developers just can't get enough of. But even without that, this is one of the most engrossing and addictive VR puzzlers out there. So that right there is my pick of some of the very best PSVR2 games you can pick up right now just after the headset has launched. But of course there's loads more lingering on the horizon. I'm particularly excited about the likes of Dark Pictures Switchback and Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord. So I will of course be thoroughly testing these out and make sure the cat is well out of kicking range. So hopefully have you an updated list of the best PSVR2 titles in just a month or so. In the meantime, please do poke subscribe, ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a bloody wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.